Good afternoon. Today is Thursday, June 25th, 2026. You're listening to Cyber FM. I'm your host, R.S.S.H, Thomas, and this is today's Cybersecurity Report, being brought to you by the R.S.S.H delivery company, New York's exclusive delivery option.
You are listening to Cyber FM, hosted by R.S.S.H Thomas.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Cyber FM. I'm your host, R.S.S.H Thomas, and you're locked in to the only show that turns the chaos of the digital world into something you can actually use. It is Thursday, June 25th, 2026, and friends, we've got a loaded broadcast for you this afternoon. Here's what's on the table. We've got a parasite in the world's software supply chain that's hijacking code at Microsoft, Google, and Apache. We've got 24 billion with a B, stolen records found sitting wide open on the internet. We've got a critical hole in a piece of software so common it's probably running on a dozen things in your office right now. And we got a proof of concept already in the wild for it. Passwords, supply chains, and quiet little libraries nobody thinks about. That's the menu for today. So grab a seat, turn me up, and let's begin.
Story number 1, cordyceps, the parasite in the supply chain.
We open this afternoon with names straight out of a horror movie. Cordyceps. If you know your nature documentaries, you know cordyceps is that real-life parasite fungus that takes over an insect's body and steers it like a puppet. Well, the researchers at a firm called Cybersecurity borrowed that name on purpose because what they found does the exact same thing to the software that runs the modern world. Here's the deal. Novi scanned roughly 30,000 high-impact code repositories across the major ecosystems and confirmed fully exploitable attack chains at some of the biggest names in tech. We're talking Microsoft, Google, Apache, Cloudflare, and the Python Software Foundation. Out of a single scan, 654 projects got flagged, and more than 300 were confirmed fully exploitable, meaning attacker-controlled code execution, credential theft, and outright supply chain takeover. Now, what is it? It lives in something called the CI/CD workflows, the automated assembly lines that developers use to build, test, and ship their software. These pipelines run commands, they hold the signing keys, they authenticate to the cloud, they publish the releases, but for years everybody treated them like simple little configuration files instead of the security critical code they actually are. And that gap is exactly what cordyceps slips through. Here's the part that should raise the hair on your neck. The flaw is exploitable by any unauthenticated user. No org membership, no special privileges. A free account is enough to forge approvals, push code, or steal credentials. On Microsoft's Azure Sentinel, a single comment on a pull request could run an attacker's code on Microsoft's own systems and steal a non-expiring app key. On Google's AI Agent Kit, one pull request could hand an attacker the highest level of authority over a Google Cloud project, and no single piece looks broken. Each step appears completely benign in isolation. The danger only shows up when you trace the full chain end to end across trust boundaries nobody ever audited. That's why the scanners miss it. And the engine making this spread, AI. As developers lean on AI coding agents to crank out these configuration files at exponential speed, those tools reproduce the same insecure patterns over and over, infecting repositories at scale, just like the fungus. Now, the good news, and it's real, this was responsible research. Microsoft and Google confirmed the impact. Cloudflare and Apache applied fixes, and the researcher told reporters there's no evidence any attacker has used this pattern broadly out in the wild, as of yet. So here's your takeaway. If you're a developer or you run an engineering team, the lesson is blunt. Treat your workflow files like the security critical code they are. Audit how your pipelines pass data to each other. Stop giving pull requests from strangers more power than they deserve. And if you're everybody else, understand that the software you run every day is built on a vast and visible foundation of open source plumbing. And that plumbing needs the same care as a bank vault, because when one workflow gets puppeted, the strings reach all the way down to you.
Story number 2, 24 billion, the pile that keeps growing.
24 billion records found sitting on the open internet. No lock, no password, no nothing. Available to anyone who simply knew where to look. The team at Cyber News uncovered it. On June 12th, they found a publicly accessible database holding more than 24 billion records and over 8.3 terabytes of data sitting in an Elasticsearch cluster. And the contents are the nightmare part. We're talking usernames, email addresses, plain text passwords stored in the clear, and the exact login URLs those credentials unlock. Think about it. One record can hand over your email, your password, and the precise website that password opens. A roadmap for breaking into your life, straight up gift wrap. So where did this all come from? Researchers say most of it came from infostealer logs, malware that quietly sits on the infected devices and siphons off usernames, passwords, and cookies, pulled together from 36 different sources, including Telegram channels and old breach collections. And here's what makes it more than just a dusty old pile of recycled leaks. Mixed in, the researchers found around 17,000 records with vulnerability IDs and GitHub links, plus thousands of logs of recent news articles about data breaches. One published as recently as February of this year, all of which points to an owner who's actively monitoring the cybersecurity landscape, keeping their collection fresh with records from the very latest breaches. Somebody isn't hoarding old data, they're keeping it current. Who owns it? Well, that remains the mystery. The sources were a mix of English and Russian, and around 260 million records came from Telegram channels carrying the name DarkSide, a nod to the now defunct ransomware crew behind the Colonial Pipeline attack a few years back. Now, there's a silver of relief here. The database was taken out of public view soon after it was discovered, which lowers the odds of criminals stumbling upon it. But here's the cold truth. Reused passwords may still put your accounts at risk, and we don't even know why the collection was being built in the first place. So the takeaway is the one I'll never stop preaching. Security experts warn this kind of leak fuels a massive wave of credential stuffing, bots automatically testing leaked password combos across banking, retail, and social media. So if you reuse passwords across sites, stop today, please. Every account gets its own unique long password. Use a password manager so you don't have to remember them, and turn on multi-factor authentication everywhere you can. Because the accounts at the most serious risk of takeover are the ones with no layer of protection. 24 billion records say the enemy already has a copy of something. Make sure it doesn't still work.
Story number 3, the library nobody thinks about. R.S.S.H.
This one is a piece of software you have never heard of that is running quietly inside the things you absolutely depend on. It's called, here we go, LIBSH2. And this is spelled LIBSSH with the number 2. Now stay with me because this matters. LIBSH2 is a little open source library, a building block that handles secure connections, the SSH and the SFTP protocols, the encrypted tunnels that let computers talk to each other safely. It's not a flashy security product. It's a foundational library quietly powering thousands of applications worldwide. It's silently embedded in tools like curl and backup utilities in the firmware of routers and IoT devices. It's everywhere, and it just got hit with the critical flaw. So we track this as CVE 2026-55200. It carries a severity score of 9.2 out of 10, and it was disclosed on June 17th. Here's the mechanism, plain English. There's a function inside LIBSH2 that reads incoming data packets but fails to properly check how big they claim to be. So when an attacker sends a packet with a deliberately enormous size value, the math overflows and it triggers a write into memory it was never supposed to touch, corrupting the system and potentially handing over full remote code execution. And here's the line that should make every IT person sit straight up. The attack is low complexity. It requires no privileges, no authentication, and no user interaction. All the attacker needs is to find a system running a vulnerable version and exposing SSH over the network. No phishing, no password, no clicking, just a connection and a malformed packet. Now, there was a second bug disclosed at the same time too, and this is CVE 2026-55199, rated 8.2, which lets a malicious server trap a connecting client in a CPU loop for over a minute, choking it. That one especially threatens your automated backup jobs and monitoring agents that connects over SSH. Now, here's the tricky, frustrating part about this story. The maintainers have already fixed the bugs with 2 code commits, but as of the reporting, they hadn't released a brand new official version yet. So Linux distributions and other projects are all scrambling to backport the fixes into their own packages. And that means updating the package on your main system is not enough. Every product that ships its own bundled copy of LIBSH2 is independently vulnerable, and each one needs its own separate vendor patch. Some vendors ship in days. Others take months. Some never will. So the takeaway, especially if you run any kind of infrastructure, go hunt for LISP2, spelled LIBSSH with the number 2, in your environment. And I mean really hunt, because it's often statically linked and buried inside bigger software where your standard package tools won't even see it. Patch what you can, and while you wait on the stragglers, restrict your SSH access to trusted host only. Filter at the network level and watch your traffic for unusually large packets. The big lesson here, folks, modern infrastructure is built on tiny, quiet, open source pieces that nobody pays attention to until something goes wrong. Today, something went wrong.
Story number 4, the exploit's already out. A POC for LIBSSH2 hits the wild.
Our final story this afternoon is the gut punch follow-up to story number 3, because the clock just sped up. A proof of concept exploit for that LISP2 flaw is already out in the open. For those just tuning in, a proof of concept, a POC, is working code that demonstrates an attack actually functions. It's the difference between there's a hole in the fence and here's exactly how you climb through it. And once that code is public, the window for the bad guys to weaponize it slams wide open. Here's what dropped. A proof of concept exploit for CVE 2026-55200 has been released, heightening the risk of attack against any system still unpatched. It was published under a repository called Exploitorium, and it includes a verifier showing how a crafted packet length value can force a tiny memory allocation while the system still thinks it's handling a huge packet. And that mismatches the whole ballgame. That's what lets the buffer overflow and corrupt the memory around it. But it gets worse. The repository also provides a malicious Python-based SSH server built to deliver that malformed packet and exploit vulnerable LISP2 clients with no authentication and no user interaction at all. In other words, somebody packaged up a ready-to-go trap, and the experts are not mincing words about what comes next. Voluncheck warned that given the zero authentication requirement and the network accessibility of this flaw, threat actors could quickly weaponize it. So here's the takeaway, and treat it as urgent. The moment a working POC is public, I'll patch it later is no longer a plan. It's a gamble, and the house always wins. A score of 9.2, no credentials needed, exploitable across the network. These are exactly the factors that make security researchers call something an urgent patching priority. If you skipped the action items in our last story, this is your second alarm. The organization that move the fastest here are the ones with mature software inventory programs, and these are the ones who actually know what's running inside their own firewalls. So, know your dependencies, patch the ones you can today, lock down SSH at the network edge for the rest, and watch your logs like a hawk. The hole in the fence has a ladder propped against it now. Don't wait to find out who climbs up. Today's program comes to you courtesy of the R.S.S.H delivery company, New York's exclusive delivery option. When it absolutely, positively has to move across the city with speed, with class, and with people who treat your package like it's their own, you call the R.S.S.H delivery company. They are the gold standard. They are New York's exclusive choice, and we are proud to have them in our corner. The R.S.S.H delivery company, New York's exclusive delivery option. And that's our briefing for this Thursday, June 25th, 2026. Let's tie it together. A parasite hijacking the world's software supply chain through pipelines nobody secured. 24 billion stolen records sitting in the open because of one careless misconfiguration. A critical flaw in a quiet little library buried in software everywhere. And a working exploit for it already loose in the wild. And the thread running through all of it, the danger lives in the places we don't look. The plumbing, the defaults, the dependencies, the boxes in the code we forgot were even there. So this week, go look at the things you've been ignoring and patch them. Lock them down. Give them the same respect you'll give the front door because the attackers already are. This has been Cyber FM. I'm your host, R.S.S.H, and this show was brought to you by the R.S.S.H delivery company, New York's exclusive delivery option. When it has to get there right, you know who to call. Stay sharp, stay patched, and trust nothing that blinks in the dark. Stay secure.
Listening to Cyber FM, hosted by R.S.S.H.